The Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And joining us now for his Friday visit, my buddy, my pal, DC Zone, Mr. Clinton Yates. How are you, sir?
I'm well, sir. I'm in San Francisco, California. For your Star Wars head fans, I was at the Ahsoka premiere last night at the Lucasfilm campus at the Presidio. Pretty cool. They got a statue of Yoda in the middle of a fountain right there in the front. It's awesome.
And who doesn't need that in their town? I think every town should have one.
It brought me peace, and I would agree with
that. So meanwhile, here in the district, here in your hometown, story of the day, Ron Rivera named Sam Howell the starting quarterback this morning. This has been a long time coming. There's been much hullabaloo this week about the timing of it all, but it all makes sense. They get through the joint practices. But, I mean, new era, like, it is a little interesting, Clinton, I think, that you have, like, new owner, key season for Rivera, and they are going with this guy that was a fifth-round pick last year, and I think it's caused a lot of national confusion. What's your take on it as the Commanders officially head into the season with Howell as QB1?
It's setting the bar awfully low. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a way that this kind of feels like Ron is saying, you know what? I'm not going to keep my job based on wins and losses. I'm going to keep my job based on whether or not people like me. And by people, I mean the new people and not the old people. Because if you're going into what's supposed to be somewhat of a make or break year for you as a veteran coach in the NFL, and you're picking a guy to lead your team that, you know, basically is a reach, you know what I mean, in terms of being able to make a playoff run. Yeah, I mean, you're just sort of deciding development is more important than winning right now. So I don't hate the decision. I mean, I do think it keeps kind of the buzzards off your back in terms of, well, if this doesn't work out, then you're screwed. If it doesn't work out, then you go to Brissett, and then hopefully you have a better chance, and maybe some of the rest of your team has gelled. But it is a very interesting indication from Ron to say, I'm going with the kid. Why not? You know, because that automatically means in this NFL that you're probably not going to be as successful as if you have a veteran.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in some ways it's selfless. Like, in some ways, this is the right move for the franchise, and I just don't know how many coaches would actually do this.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. I mean, that's sort of what I meant, is that Ron is basically saying the football product I'm going to try to make as good as possible for whatever the expectations are. The Ron Rivera product is going to have to be a separate matter, which I actually think, if I'm in the business of protecting Ron in terms of his interests, I actually think it's probably the right move. There's no world in which people like Ron the guy if the football team isn't developing. And if you don't believe that at the highest ceiling of what Jacoby Brissett is, you're going to have yourself a 10-win season or a 12-win season, well, then you might as well just say, let's get the team together while Ron, develop my relationship with the new ownership, with the new people that are looking to go forward. It's not the worst strategy. It is selfless, but there is also a level of self-protection in it that he thinks he can rely on his personality to get through it.
Yeah, no, well, it's also, you know, you go back to the offseason and how much do we talk about the idea of trading for Lamar or like taking other big swings. And, you know, I think we could certainly go back over the course of the 4 years and look at different off ramps and be like, well, that's where you could have gotten your quarterback or that's where you should have done that. But I do kind of think they entered this offseason, Clinton, and they were like, we got nothing. There's no good option out there. Like, the best one we can try for is Lamar, and that's just not going to happen because, you know, the Ravens will match anything, yada, yada, yada. And so you play this card because it's the only one you can. And that's why I don't know, like, and I guess the thing is like, is that going to trick Josh Harris?
No, but I do think that there's something to be said for, and this is something we don't see a lot in the NFL for, which is you don't actually have to fire your coach. You don't have to be on the strict regimen of if it doesn't happen in 5 years, then you're gone. You don't have to constantly be looking at markers like quarterbacks and let's just say playoff wins in order to decide your team is making progress. In the specific case of the Commanders, in fact, all of those other escalator things that would make sense for other franchises do not, in fact, make sense here. Perhaps the best development of this franchise as a larger, healthier product, as in between fan base, front office, on-field product, and perception in the league, is stop firing people. How about you get some continuity? You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody's expecting this team to be good anyway. They haven't been good for 30 years. Just make sure that everybody likes each other and that you're growing your seeds the way you're supposed to on your farm, as opposed to just worrying about what flowers you're going to sell. I don't hate it from everybody involved. Not everybody has to be on edge and on pins and needles in order for people to have success in the NFL.
Are you saying that because you heard my rant yesterday about fans who are just angry and want to fire anyone all the time, or was that just a genuine
No.
take that happened to be compatible?
The force is strong on that one, and in general, you know how I stand on fire everybody all the time. It doesn't have to happen, you know what I'm saying? And it doesn't mean anybody gets better either.
Remind me to send you the rant. I unloaded like I don't do very often. I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay.
Clinton Yates
All
with us here on the Hoffman Show, of course, commentator at ESPN. Watch him on Around the Horn. Read his work online, ESPN.com and Anscape. So NBA announced their full schedule yesterday. Wizards get one national television game, at least to start. It is Jordan Poole's return to Golden State. Then you got some NBA TV games like Bradley Beal's return to the District. But I know you're more interested, as opposed to going through the schedule and this, that. Are we excited about this game? You have thoughts on the NBA Cup, which I am pro NBA Cup. Are you pro NBA Cup?
I don't know if I'm pro NBA Cup because I don't know that I understand the NBA Cup. And not because I am some rube who is so mystified by schedule changes in midseason tournaments, but from a basic competitive balance standpoint. These games count towards the regular season, correct?
Correct.
They're regular games. All of the incentive for them is simply money, and that's it.
Correct.
Why are you playing the tournament if the other teams are only other NBA teams? I genuinely do not understand the competitive purpose of this if it, A, isn't going to include other squads from other places, or B, isn't going to help a team like, let's just say you win it, you get a free play into the play-in, if you will, if you're one of these younger teams, or rather, fringe teams. Like, I just don't get the point, is what it comes down to. It's not like in the WNBA where, frankly, the extra cash from winning the tournament, because of the way that things are set up, helps players in ways that they could not otherwise get outside of the schedule. I don't get it, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm not saying that it's bad, but it's got a lame name, and it doesn't seem to have any real purpose other than playing a couple of games in Vegas, which you could do anyway. I just don't understand what the point is, and it seems to be odd from a schedule-making standpoint that it exists at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was interesting hearing some of the behind-the-scenes interviews or some of the interviews with folks who worked on this behind the scenes, and how many things they considered, why they said certain things could or couldn't work. And I think this thing is a start with room to expand. From what I took away from a lot of those, like Zach Lowe, obviously, who's deep in the weeds of anything NBA related. He did an interview with the guy who kind of was the chief of the tournament, if you will. And they definitely considered, I think, a lot of other options. But you get down to the logistics, and I just think these things are hard. You're not on a European continent where there's 5 leagues that are, the same flight away from, Memphis to Utah.
Right.
I guess it's just hey, can we get some more attention? And ultimately, aren't we all sports-wise in the attention business?
Yeah, but I don't think that in the NBA, if we're being honest, the biggest piece of impact they have is not actually games being played, which sounds counterproductive. Well, not counterproductive, but counterintuitive. But NBA fans writ large these days like things that almost have nothing to do with actual gameplay. They've got to do with interaction between players. They got to do with off-court nonsense in terms of what people are talking about. And I'm not knocking any of this. This is just how the taste of the younger NBA fan has evolved. I don't know that mixing up, game schedules outside of drastically reducing them to the point that it's going to affect each, the importance of each game, or wildly incentivizing things from a money standpoint that is much bigger than this, is really going to move the needle. Hey, what am I going to do? Go buy an NBA Cup t-shirt at, in Las Vegas? Okay. But if it doesn't really change anything and the games still count towards the regular season, you're kind of throwing off the imbalance for the purposes of what? It's not that it's bad. I just don't understand why it's happening. You've been playing games in your backyard for the entirety of your existence. You're just going to play them in the front yard now and say, hey, you want to come look? That's just kind of what it feels like in terms of what the relative change is between one to the other. I don't really understand.
Yeah, I guess the thing is that why I'm pro this is it's not disruptive. And,
right.
There is a way, because I think that was my thing initially. I didn't really understand what it meant by in season. I thought they were going to have extra games in the season. I'm yeah, y'all need to reduce the number of games, not add to them. This is a problem. But then it's oh no, it's actually regular season games. And they've made it fairly easy to understand, where it's every Friday is NBA Cup night. Your team's gonna be playing on these days in November. And you're going, because of the ease of it and making it easy to understand, I think it's a thing that people will kind of tune into and be like, oh, no, let me check it out. And then it just becomes a competition. And at the end of the day, if you add some kind of competition element to something, and there's more urgency to it because it's like, oh, these games matter more for something that is sooner. Like, again, I don't think this is going to be revolutionary in any way. I think we're still steps away from being revolutionary, but I think they were able to accomplish something that is so not disruptive to the schedule and so easy to understand and follow once you get into it, that there will be a little bit more juice, which in the middle of November for the NBA, which is typically ignored till at least Christmas, like, I don't know functionally how much better they could have done at this point in time.
Let's just say it this way. This current product is mayonnaise. Alert me when it gets to Miracle Whip because that tastes better.
All right. Well,
by the way, do you want to know a good story, Craig? Let me tell you a quick story. Speaking of NBA speculation and random.
I thought you were going to go down a mayonnaise track, and I was
No,
okay.
I was not. So I happened to be at let's just say a relatively upscale bar in Beverly Hills. I do not normally do this. I do not hang out in these kind of places, but I was with a ball player and his agent, and this is where they wanted to go to dinner because we're friends. And I'm in this joint, and we're at dinner. It's maybe 10:30 at night, probably 11 o'clock. And I'm thinking to myself, I asked the guy, I say, is this the kind of place where famous people hang out or where people who want to be famous hang out? He says, no. They get some pretty good celebrities in here. And I'm like, okay. So at one point, the guy turns to me, the player turns to me, he goes, yo, look behind you. That's Mario. As in, like, you could let me love you, Mario. He's wearing a big silver chain with an M on it around his neck in case you didn't know who he was. And then I proceed to scan the room, and I go, wait a second. That guy kind of looks like a fat Johnny Manziel. Not realizing that's actually what Johnny Manziel looks like these days. It was definitely him. And then Kyle Kuzma walked in, and then Jordan Peele walked in, and then a bunch of other dudes who were barely recognizable NBA faces who I couldn't name walked in, and then Kevin Durant walked in. And I was like, oh, so I guess it does get celebrity guests very regularly, and now it is officially time for me to go because we are out of my price range on every single level. So that happened 2 days ago in Los Angeles, just in case you wanted to know.
And that's that BLA sometimes if you're in the right spot, which, actually isn't like, it's hard to get into from the price range, but like everyone goes to the same places. So if you know where to go, you can do the celebrity thing. By the way, did you watch the Manziel doc?
I have not watched that yet. I'm probably going to commit that to my brain this weekend. I'd like to. Everybody tells me it's really good. It's like a tight 60. It doesn't get too far field. And the thing is, like, I never had a problem with Johnny Manziel. I thought he was a guy that was such an obvious sort of not victim, but result of the system that it kind of made it tough to root for or against him in any sort of real way. You know what I mean? I felt like he was a guy that was just kind of going along to get along and playing as best as he could. So to see him out having a good time with some friends, was actually kind of refreshing. He's not completely down in the dumps wondering what happened to his life or his career.
Yeah, the doc is really good and interesting because the story is not over. Like from a football sense, it is obviously, but like his life story is not over, and it leaves you with that, which I think is actually very powerful. I think a lot of times these documentaries try to like wrap things up, and like if you're making a doc about a 30-year-old, there's nothing to wrap there. So it's good. That Untold series is really good. So I'm actually excited because you know the next one, right? The one that just dropped that I'm watching this weekend because I've already watched the Manziel one.
Which will you be watching?
It's on the Balco Lab. Like as in Bonds, Marion Jones, all of them.
Oh, yes. My buddy watched that, and there are a couple different things in that I'd completely forgotten about, such as that Tim Montgomery went to prison for like 5 years for dealing heroin on the side. There's so many weird details in these things. Like, anyway. Yeah, I'm excited
for that. We can talk documentaries next week. Clinton Yates with us every Friday here on the Hoffman Show. Have a great weekend, my friend, and pay homage to the Yoda statue for us.
May the force be with you, Gregory, as always. What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.